Hello everyone, I'm Nina Kane, and today I'm going to be talking about the ethics of intellectual freedom and when censorship in libraries is necessary. Let's begin with an introduction to intellectual freedom. According to our textbook, Rubin and Rubin state that intellectual freedom includes freedom from government oversight, freedom to access information, and freedom to create your own content. We usually think of intellectual freedom as the freedom to access knowledge, but I want to emphasize that it includes the freedom to create and share your personal views as well. According to the ALA, people have the right to any beliefs and to share those beliefs. Intellectual freedom is important because by controlling information, you can effectively control a person's views. People should be allowed to assess all the information and come to a conclusion on their own. Intellectual freedom is integral to democracy. A democracy relies on an educated society. People need to be educated about issues to make decisions about them. In the 1930s, Germany began book burning, which led to the rise of intellectual freedom in the US. American librarians saw what was happening over there and took it upon themselves to make sure information from all viewpoints was being preserved in America. In 1939, the ALA adopted the Library Bill of Rights. The Library Bill of Rights is a document containing the rights and principles of library service. It includes the principle of intellectual freedom. McCarthyism took place between 1950 and 1954. It was a campaign led by Senator Joseph McCarthy that sought to find communists in America. It was basically a witch hunt. Many of the people accused of communism were not guilty. This led librarians to take a stance to preserve all points of view, even those that did not align with their personal values. They used this argument to defend themselves against accusations of communism. If communist materials were found in the library, they could say they personally do not agree with it, they are just preserving all points of view. In 1953, the Freedom to Read Statement was adopted. It rejected all forms of censorship and has been revised multiple times, most recently in 2004. What is censorship? According to Dressing, censorship is the prevention of access to information or expression of your views. It can be passive or active. Passive censorship includes not choosing a certain piece of material to be included in the library's collection. Active censorship is when items are removed, restricted, or relocated. Self-censorship. There is no need to censor if people are fearful of expressing themselves and engage in self-censorship. If you are a person from a marginalized group who lives in an area with racism and bigotry, you might fear for your safety when expressing your views. Say you are a member of the LGBTQ+ community living in a very religious area. You may be afraid to express your views on gay marriage. If you are too afraid to speak out, then you are engaging in self-censorship. What does the government say about censorship in libraries? Currently, there are a few subjects that the government has enacted laws in favor of censorship. Society's morals are constantly changing. These laws could change in the future. The Supreme Court has ruled that a very small number of categories should be censored and are not protected as free speech. These include obscenity, child pornography, defamation, and speech that incites immediate lawless action. Because obscenity is based on the morals of society, it can become a slippery slope on what should be censored. In 2000, the Children's Internet Protection Act was passed by Congress. Libraries must use internet filters to receive government funding. The ALA fought against the Children's Internet Protection Act and lost. We are currently experiencing a major problem of disinformation on the internet. Anyone can publish their views on the internet without review. While this has been good for personal expression, there are many people who falsely post their opinion as fact. In these cases, I agree with the ALA's stance. This is not a case where we should censor. We should instead teach patrons to analyze information. Internet filtering is required in libraries by law. There are filters in place to block nudity, sexuality, violence, and profanity. Yet these filters are often unsuccessful. They block safe information while letting some obscenity through. Social media sites regularly censor posts as content moderation. As a private company, they have this right. For example, Twitter has recently banned Donald Trump from tweeting on their site. They are not infringing on his right to free speech, they are only banning him from using their platform after they determined that he has violated their rules. Should the library engage in censorship of what they know to not be factual? Remember, the ALA would argue that it is not their job to review the content of information, only to preserve and make it available. Let's talk a little about why it is so hard to combat disinformation on the internet. Once people have come to a conclusion about something, it is very hard to get them to change their minds. People often fully believe in their beliefs without reasons to back them up. We should teach people how to reason instead of censor. We can do this by bringing awareness to the existence and prevalence of disinformation, as well as teach them tactics to analyze. I personally agree that in the case of minors in schools, we should be using internet filters, but it is not reasonable among adults. I believe school libraries to be a special case, which we will discuss more in depth later on. The goal of the ALA is to provide unrestricted access to the internet for everyone, including minors. Though privacy protection technology, which could be seen as a form of censorship, should be used. It is very important to protect the privacy of minors. Many minors might want to post photos of themselves or post personal information on social media as a form of self-expression. Because intellectual freedom includes the freedom of self-expression, many students could see the restrictions as censorship. Because the goal of these restrictions is privacy protection, not censorship, minors should be restricted from posting certain types of information to the public. Inter argues any person of any age should be allowed to borrow any book. Shelving books by reading level can be considered a form of censorship. This again is another instance where intent should be taken into consideration. Shelving books by reading level is done as a means of organization and is not intended to keep certain titles away from younger readers. Internet filters are currently required on school computers. The Children's Internet Protection Act requires that computers used by students 17 and younger are filtered from obscenity, pornography, and content harmful to minors. I believe these laws have the right idea, but in reality are imperfect. The phrase harmful to minors is so open-ended, and its definition is always changing. Kids should feel empowered to ask tough questions at school. Even though the content is censored, teachers and parents alike should be open to discussion about the harms of viewing obscenity and pornography. When selecting books for school libraries, librarians are possibly unknowingly censoring books by choosing those with educational value over those they deem immoral. The ALA's stance toward intellectual freedom is neutral, giving equal value to all points of view. In the article from 2020, Farkas argues that marginalized people are less safe when expressing themselves and often engage in self-censorship. Because of societal imbalances, when libraries are neutral, they give privileged people more power. We must work toward societal equality in order to have true intellectual freedom. This brings us to sensitivity reading. Sensitivity reading is a process that takes place during the editing of a work of fiction. When an author is writing about a culture that is not his own, a member of that culture should read the work and see if the representation is accurate. Many authors unintentionally use negative stereotypes in their portrayal of marginalized cultures. Some consider sensitivity reading to be censorship. I would argue that sensitivity reading increases the artistic value and the accuracy of a work. Again, we must consider intent. Is the intent to restrict information or to increase the value of storytelling? There are many ethical factors when talking about intellectual freedom. It is easy to stand up for the rights of those you agree with, but it becomes more difficult to stand up for those with whom you disagree. Personal morals differ from professional duties. Everyone should have the right to access and create information. It is very important to be open-minded and empathetic. There are a few special cases in which we should engage in censorship. First, children are a special case and should be protected while on school computers. Second, according to current laws, overly violent or pornographic content should not be accessed on library computers. And third, shelving books by age, for example, having a YA children's section, etc., is necessary. And even though it may be considered restricting access, it should be used for organization and ease of use by patrons. Our current system is not perfect, and there is room for improvement. We should strive to make internet filters more effective. We should talk to our children about why they are restricted from accessing certain information on the internet. And by working toward true equality in society, we will be closer to having true intellectual freedom.